So the federal government appears to be racing against time here in a bid to avert a nationwide indefinite strike action. The Minister of Labour has met with the NLC. He's also meeting with the Trade Union Congress, all in a bid to perhaps meet up with that deadline, which is set for this week. Recall that the NLC had released a statement where it gave a 21-day ultimatum at the beginning of this month. So what exactly played out in that meeting? What were the issues that are outstanding, as it were? Because what we hear is that that meeting ended without a resolution. You listened to the Minister of Labour speaking earlier, and also the President of the NLC. And joining us on the program to give us an insight into what the issues are, what is at stake, what progress has been made, and is there perhaps a zone of possible agreement? We're joined by Comrade Joe Ajero, who led the NLC's delegation to that meeting. He joins us virtually on the program tonight. Thank you for joining us on the program, Comrade Ajero. Well, we see that that meeting did not end the way a lot of people would have expected. Perhaps resolutions met, a definitive statement made on the impending indefinite strike action. So what exactly played out in that meeting such that resolutions were not met or made, as it were?
Well, the meeting was quite friendly meeting, quite engaging, because the issues have gone beyond the Minister of Labour, apart from maybe one or two issues that came up, after the withdrawal of subsidy. You will reflect back to discover that there's already a presidential committee that is kind of interministerial that was discussing the issue of CNG gas, that the Minister of Labour can work on it. The issue of refineries, the Minister of Labour can work on it. The issue of wage award, the Minister of Labour cannot give any award, wage award. The issue of even cash transfer, the ASU issue, all those issues are beyond the ministry, especially when discussions are already ongoing on all these issues. But the Minister is competent enough to mediate on issues between Labour and the federal government. As Minister of Labour, so conciliator to conciliate on it. Apparently, that was under the premise that the minister invited us to see whether he can apprehend the issue of industrial crisis between Labour, and the federal government. So on that note, the minister appealed to the Nigerian Labour Congress, asking for more time for federal government to come out a position that will be mutually agreeable. But we insisted that the federal government has enough time. And we went back, I joined the meeting hoping that he will consult his principals for us to effectively resolve this matter before the end of the next 3-4 days. Will be that will be for the expiration of the ultimatum. So that was the meeting we had. Quite friendly.
To the federal government, as the Minister of Labour requested?
I can't get you.
You said that the Minister of Labour sought more time, asking that you give the federal government more time to resolve the issues. And my question is the NLC particularly now giving the federal government more time?
So we agree that the federal government had had more than enough time for the past 4 months. And that even if there is commitment, a genuineness of purpose, that between now and the next 3-4 days, issues will be resolved. And we hope that the minister will work with us within these next few days to make sure we resolve the matter.
Right. We understand that the meeting is expected to continue tomorrow. Can you confirm that?
Well, if they invite us for meeting tomorrow, we'll attend. But
okay.
There is no invitation for tomorrow's meeting.
Right. So as it stands now, the ultimatum is still in effect. The clock is still ticking, if I get you correctly, and the 21-day ultimatum, which expires this week, is still in place. Just before we break down the issues so Nigerians can better understand, and we know where we're at and the way forward, speak to us about why the TUC is holding a separate meeting with the government. Whatever happened to organized labor?
Well, there's no organization, there's no trade union registered as organized labor. It was coined for the convenience of the government, maybe to avoid two meetings. And the two organizations are independent, although one is the foremost, labor center, and in international labor organization or any meeting, the foremost and the union with the highest worker representative leads. Even in ILO, we must take TUC along. So if we couldn't agree again on issues, we can meet separately with the government and table our matters. And from what you can see from our last warning strike, you see that we can go it alone.
So you're saying you do not need the TUC, there's nothing like organized labor anymore, and both of you are working independently?
Yeah, we can work independently, we can work jointly when we agree. But we will not, the NLC will not take under our watch if we give a strike notice, and then a union that didn't give a strike notice say they are backing out of a strike that they didn't call for. So every union can give their strike notice. TUC can give their strike notice and go ahead with their notice. NLC can give their strike notice and go ahead with their notice. But if TUC gives their strike notice, NLC will not come out to say that they are not part of it, because they didn't even say they were part of it. So those are things that are being streamlined now, and I think that maybe the ministry is enjoying it.
Oh, are you saying that this is perhaps a divide and rule tactic from the ministry? So I'll say a divided house cannot stand. A lot of people had seen the NLC and TUC together. So are you blaming the federal government for dividing the NLC and TUC?
The government is doing what they're supposed to do. There are about 50-something industrial unions in the country. The federal government meet them individually. Any of them can call for an action and address their issues. Ditto the centers. NLC is made up of about 50-something trade unions. Even within that trade union, 50-something, each of them can take an action. So the NLC is independent, the TUC is independent. If they like, they come together on an issue that is mutually affecting all of them. But on this issue, if the TUC say that is the subsidy removal, does not affect their members, and the NLC say it affects their members, you see that each one will pursue it in their own way. TUC may have a way they are pursuing theirs, and the NLC have a way of their pursuing theirs. What is important is for us to achieve, the aim for which the trade union organization is set up.
So let's break down the issues, comrade, so we can have a fruitful conversation for the sake of our nation. Your demands, you've listed them out time and again. So let's see just perhaps what progress has been made and what the specific issues are. The review of minimum wage stands out clearly, and Labour is seeking for an upward review, obviously, of the minimum wage. What figure, what rate are you pushing for at this moment, and what progress has been made? What is the federal government telling you?
Well, we have not put at the table the issue of minimum wage. What we put at the table is the issue of wage award. And wage award is to cushion the effects, of the increase in pump prices of petroleum products. Wage award is different from minimum wage. The minimum wage law will be reviewed next year, and by next year, the federal government and the state governments and the trade unions in the country will meet and discuss the issue of minimum wage. But each time there's an action, by the federal government, that affects the wage of employees, what normally happens is that a certain percentage will be marked out as a wage award to cushion the effect. Early this year, the federal government under President Buhari, gave a 40% award, to workers, in the country, especially, sorry, in the federal public service, to cushion the effect of COVID-19. That is wage award, it's not minimum wage. So, and that is what we have asked for. And then we have not met at the table to discuss a percentage that is appropriate. I discussed this even with Mr. President and drew this demarcation, and he was telling me that would be double. I said, yes, that would be double. But take care of this wage award first before a minimum wage. And the minimum wage goes with law. It is legislated at the National Assembly. And the date, it will expire will be next year. So we are not mixing it up, minimum wage and wage award.
So what percentage of wage award are you looking at, comrade?
Sorry?
What percentage are you looking at for the wage award?
Well, we'll take the percentage of the hike. If you check the percentage of hike, we have almost 100 or 200% as of today. But we would have looked at it, not a straight jacket on percentage. If some other issues are to be taken along with it holistically, if we have addressed the issue of CNG buses in the country, and where people pay 500 naira and they're paying maybe 200 naira, we will not insist on 200% wage award, because the main issue that is affected by this policy of the government has been the issue of transportation. There has been the issue of the energy. So if we had addressed it, Labour will not be talking of maybe 200% or 100%. A certain percentage will come up, and then we'll discuss it and agree on it. Bearing in mind that by next year, the issue of minimum wage will still come up. We'll take the whole thing into consideration.
I recall that the presidency, in a statement on the president's 100 days, spoke specifically about minimum wage, saying that it's working out a minimum wage and salary increase in the aftermath of subsidy removal. So it looks like that's on the table, at least as far as the federal government is concerned. Now that you've mentioned CNG, let's talk about that, because a lot of Nigerians are seeking alternatives to CNG. What is your demand? There's a presidential committee on CNG roadmap, but there's a time frame to that one, saying that, well, all of this might not come into fruition fully up until 2024. What does Labour want as a matter of urgency when it comes to CNG?
We have had an agreement on this before now. Under Silva, the former Minister of Petroleum in 2021, we had an agreement with the federal government. And it was clear that about 1 million vehicles to be converted within the first 3 months. I don't know who is bringing this idea that nothing could be done until the 2024. It's live. It's not rocket science. Even conversion of vehicles now, could be on. In addition to even bringing in vehicles that are CNG driven. Even the issue of NLC motors, from that 2021 we had that agreement with him and the federal government, has mass-produced buses that are CNG driven. If anybody is telling you that until next year that nothing could be done, I'm telling you that the person is not telling us the truth. In other countries, I just came in from China yesterday, 90% of the vehicles there are electric motors that chargers. You charge for even 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and it will last you for about 20 hours in that order. So the federal government is not talking of even bringing, electric motors, electric batteries. They are not talking of CNG. They're only telling you it can be possible. And we're saying it can be possible between now and the next 2-3 months. We could flood our roads with CNG buses, with CNG vehicles, with electric battery vehicles. And it's possible. And you can't just say, well, 4 months gone. It says it can't be done until next year. What is so peculiar about next year when these processes will start? Is it that there are no CNG vehicles that can come into the road, or we can't have some stations, even with Ipman saying that their filling stations are available? They have not made any effort on any issue. Even the issue as simple as cash transfer or bringing buses on the road, nothing has happened to them. So it's lack of willingness, and we can't model up all these issues, and then call minimum wage as wage award. Minimum wage, if anybody is looking at the issue of wage award as minimum wage, then there's confusion within that class of people.
So it even raises issues about the kind of dialogue that is being done here. the kind of, back and forth, reconciliation as the case is here, whether there's trust, whether the communication is clear enough, because that is vital to achieving success. But let's talk more about some of the issues that have been raised. You've said that the CNG is a deal breaker and 2024 is too far. Are you considering the question of funding? Where do you think that the federal government can get the money from to purchase these things? And not to talk of capacity. Perhaps if we're looking at local production, have you looked at the capacity of those who are to manufacture in-house? Do we have that capacity? Have you checked?
Well, I know that importation by the federal government, even with the removal of waiver, by now we would have had thousands of CNG buses on the streets. Clear. And like I said before, it's not rocket science. Either from Brazil or any other country. So we should not be looking at these things as if, if they don't happen in the way we want it, the whole world will come to an end. Even within us, the labor movement, what we need is clear direction from the government. We have talked with people, experts in CNG that are ready to roll out. If the federal government agrees on a policy direction, independently, people will convert their vehicles to CNG buses. And then, but you see, it must take a policy direction, for the federal government to say, oh, this one has happened, especially with the willingness of, the IPMAN to say, our filling stations are available. Let's do this conversion. Let us start from somewhere.
Well, Comrade, pardon me to butt in here. Are you saying, you said that you've actually spoken, you've done some research. Are you saying that Labour is willing to take on that, project, the responsibility of getting the buses? Is that something you're pushing forward as well, that, well, we can handle it, you can give us the funding and we'll bring in the buses? Is that something you're considering?
I've talked to a lot of people at our NEC meetings. The experts have come to address us. But the most scandalous part was that where the experts were telling us that they could convert a vehicle for 280,000, and that they could provide facilities for workers to take loan from some banks and pay for a period of about 3 years, the amount used in conversion. Now, the meeting we had with the federal government, they were proposing the same conversion at 800,000. Now, this is why we are saying we can handle this, at a cheaper cost. But they want a CNG conversion process that is pioneered and driven by the federal government. And it can be driven at that amount, at that rate. So these are issues that we need to harmonize, before they stop conversation with us. Some of these things are laughable.
Well, we're winding down on this conversation. And just to be clear, the ultimatum, when does it elapse? Is it a Thursday, Friday? When this week does it elapse exactly?
Friday.
On Friday. Right. So race against time, literally. One more issue before we go, and that's the issue of refinery. It's a major issue in your demands. The federal government has promised that at least one of them will be up by December. I don't know if you are very confident about that. It looks like the government is confident, but have you checked the state of the other refineries? I don't know if you have. I imagine you have perhaps workers there as well. What do you hear about the refineries in terms of their state, how much it will cost to get them working, what duration of time it will take? Do you have information on that?
Well, this whole issue about refineries have been on the table. As at 2021, we had a meeting. In fact, I was part of the committee set up then. The federal government promised that by 2022, that it was going to come up, especially that of Port Harcourt Refinery. Thereafter, we'll move on to Warren, before eventually out of Kaduna. So by mid-2022, we made inquiries, raised issues around it, and they promised that it was going to come up by December 2022. By December 2022, again, nothing happened. Nothing. And they said first quarter of 2023. First quarter of 2023, was with us. But on this same issue, it was in a meeting with the president, and he asked the group managing director of NNPC emphatically when would the refinery be ready. And he said, and it was corroborated with my two colleagues from Pengashan TUC and Nupen, that works have reached advanced stage in the Port Harcourt refinery, that by December, it was going to be ready. So that's what led to that date. And from there, we can move into the others, Warri and Kaduna. So, but we want to see one, start operation before, we can now say for sure. The other ones, there is commitment to put them, ready for production.
But do you know about the state of the others? What would you say about the state of the other refineries, the Warri and Kaduna?
But the state of the other refineries that they are not refining now, including Port Harcourt. And that's why this issue of repair, in fact, the case of Port Harcourt is like another refinery, in addition to the one that is in operation there. It's like there's combined, team or combined production, sorry. This one be refining this capacity. Another one being built within the same refinery. Was like the civil work made provision for expansion. So that is what they are offering in Port Harcourt. And it's assumed that when they start it, it will service the people to a large extent,
right,
while that of Warri and Kaduna, will still come on stream.
So on a final note, comrade, when it comes to conciliation and issues as this, there's always the zone of possible agreement where perhaps you can meet each other maybe halfway or what have you. What would you say at this point is your ZOPA, Labour's zone of possible agreement in this negotiation with the federal government?
Well, in the first instance, every party puts their own card, for possible negotiation. And when you reach that point, I think you can strike a balance, that, okay, you have attended to this, and then let's give you 1 day or two. But the issue of good faith, utmost good faith, is very, very important. Not when you negotiate one, nothing happens, two, nothing happens, three, nothing happens. It becomes a very big problem. As we are talking now, if you go to a negotiation with about 5 demands or 6 demands,
right,
and one has not been met, you can't go back to tell your people that none has been met. As we talk now, none of the demands have been addressed, even the simplest of it all.
Right. Well, I'd like to thank you so much, Comrade Joe Ajaero, and wish you the best. The meeting continues tomorrow, as we hear, so we'll, of course, follow up with that. I wish you the very best, Comrade Joe Ajaero, the NLC president. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
God bless you.